Aloha, sweethearts. It is so good to be back. I'm calling this recording Back from the Edge because I've been really on the edge. And I can't tell you how wonderful, how right it feels to be making these recordings again. So I guess I'll explain what's been going on as much as I can explain. And it's going to take an act of faith on your part to trust me that my interpretation of what's been going on is correct, because it hasn't seemed that way to a lot of people. So I'll just begin by saying that I did a deep prayer, a profound prayer, after Ellie had just died, well, during that process also. I did such a profound prayer because I had learned what it was like to be beyond human limitations, because she and I had practiced going there every day, several times a day. And so I was feeling like I wanted to keep that wild joy, that peace that was beyond any story, any problem. And so I did a deep prayer to become more of myself. But you know, as I've often told my students, sincere prayers often cause a result that's confusing. Because it's one thing if you say, oh, I want a lover. How's that one? But if it's a really sincere prayer that says, I'm willing to change anything in me that keeps me from allowing myself to be loved, then what happens is that everything that keeps love from flowing through you, in you, comes to the surface to be healed. So another example, if you say, I want abundance, and you really mean it, and your soul is taking you seriously, then your soul is determined to show you all the beliefs you have that keep you from abundance. And so when you pray a sincere prayer, it looks like everything goes backwards. Everything goes wrong. But that's only if you're really willing to state, I'll do whatever it takes. So, for example, with health, I felt like it was time. I've been sick since I was born. I've been sick since the womb. But I felt like I was just done. So I'll get you to that in a minute. You know, I always taught my students that if they ingested poison, then I would be relieved for them to throw up, because you want everything that does not match health. You want it to just disappear. You want it to be released. So I did this prayer to release all poisonous beliefs, all patterns, all habits that kept me from being my most joyous, most divine self. And I guess you're not surprised to hear that within hours of doing that prayer, everything, and I really mean everything, fell apart. First of all, my computer, well, it had been dying, but it did a terrible, agonizing, awful death. And so I couldn't do my YouTube channel anymore. And that just really confused me, because I felt like it was the most right thing I'd done in a long time, but no computer. And then I did the prayer, and my health, the illness that I was born with, just showed up all of a sudden, because I don't know if most of you know, but I was born paralyzed because of exposure to radiation and heavy metals and all that. And so when I was born, I was so paralyzed that I had to be on a respirator, and I had to be on a heart machine, and I couldn't even poop. I had to have colonics even as a baby, and I couldn't breathe. So I had to have oxygen machines. And so, you know, I have had that my whole life, but I've been able to keep it in a balance so that I can still do my life. And I've thought of it as a blessing because I know I've told you it kept me out of school, kept me out of church, kept me from getting indoctrinated. So I really have liked my life with this so-called disability. But right after I did that prayer, all of a sudden I couldn't breathe again, so I had to be on my oxygen chamber and the hyperbaric chamber. And thank God that my friends fixed it for me. And I couldn't swallow because my throat and my esophagus were paralyzed. So I went for, I think it was 3 days, this is like a month and a half ago, where I couldn't swallow even a drop of water, not alone food. And so it got to the point where it was serious. People were taking it seriously, and I was losing track of reality, you know. So therefore I had to go on IVs for both swallowing the food and well, for getting nutrients from the food and for being hydrated. And then I had to be on an oxygen machine, and then I had to be doing colonics. And for the past maybe month and a half, I've been very weak. I only slept for a month. It just required total surrender. And I see the perfection of it. It got set up for me because we're in quarantine. I can't, my phone wasn't working. How could that be? My computer had died. I couldn't do YouTube, and I couldn't eat, I couldn't cook, I couldn't stand up, I couldn't do anything. So what a perfect time for total surrender. And my loved ones were very worried, but I knew that I was releasing patterns that I'd had since birth, and that I was upgrading into who I was born to be. And I kept telling myself, I kept hearing the words, it's time. And I'm saying it's not time just for me, it's for all of you. It's for all of us. Because something is shifting in the world right now. And I could no longer allow limitations. I could no longer allow brokenness. And I could just hear myself, my soul saying to me, you're done with being sick. You're done with needing any intervention. You're done with being afraid of being accused of being a witch, which I always was, and having them come and do exorcisms on me. I was just done. But I think that you've got to be done too. That, can't you feel this new vibration? Can't you feel this demand in you, this prayer forming in you? And what I want to say is you don't need to know how, what to do. All you need to do is allow. You know, I always use the example of, you don't hear a pregnant mother screaming, I don't know how to grow the baby's toes. Because it's automatic, it's hardwired. We humans are designed to become the next stage of ourselves. And we're hardwired to release that which no longer serves us. And so once you do that, sincere prayer for help, then the old systems crack and then they collapse. And we start needing the things we've been addicted to prop us up, just staying busy or keeping a definition of ourselves that is so limited. And so we begin to look, when we pray for help, all of a sudden it looks like we're very sick, or we're depressed, or there's more poverty, or more fear of, are any of us going to stay alive? And there's so much loneliness in the collective. But you know, eventually, energy upgrades. It always does. And it upgrades by levels of density. And I'll explain that. We always change at the lightest, most spiritual level first, because that's easier. So first we get it on a spiritual level of saying, oh, well, yeah, of course love is the answer. Our spirit knows that. It's always known that. It was born into this body knowing that. But you see how many people become spiritual teachers, so-called, and they speak wise spiritual words, but they're not clear emotionally, and they're often lying to their students, to their devotees, even to themselves. But after we get it spiritually, then we come down and we just start to come down into something that's kind of halfway between body and spirit, and that's our intellect. And in our intellect, we can say, of course I deserve love, but I can't feel that love because we haven't gone down into the emotional body. And then as we mature, we go into more and more density. And finally, we've practiced so much. We've observed ourselves so much that even our emotional body knows that we can give and receive love. In the last stage, I guess I'd say the last stage of integration is that even our cells, our atoms, begin to express a higher state of being. We begin to express divine humanity, an integration of body and spirit, a creating of heaven and earth, where we can hold divinity even at a cellular level. And when that happens, oh my God, life changes. And we spark other people who are around us. We activate them. We wake up their memory of who they really are. So by now, in my 70s, I'd already done most of the first 3 levels. I knew even emotionally that I deserved love, but my body didn't know yet. And you know, staying broken kind of felt like safety. Like people wouldn't notice me, I wouldn't come above radar. But then, this recent prayer just rose up in me. A prayer for wholeness, for divinity. And in order to live that, my cells had to change. Because you can't hold that much God. You can't hold that much love without being electrocuted if you don't let it flow. Because God is magnetic. God is electrical. Love is electrical. And if we can't let that much love flow, we begin to feel burnt, electrocuted. So in order for me to become my divine self, I had to not block anything. I had to let my cells flow with energy that felt like putting my hand into an electrical socket. But to learn not to make that a problem, to let that be okay. So I started to allow the answer to my prayer of being so well. And you know, mystics say, you know those mystics, They say that we learn by subtraction rather than addition. In other words, we don't need to learn how to be a divine healer by adding more knowledge or more skills or meditating more or practicing more or sounding wise. None of that works. Instead, we simply must subtract what no longer serves us, allowing our own signature, our original instructions, because we can't stop becoming ourselves. So I'm so pleased to report that I am more of myself than I've ever been. I have a new computer, thanks to my dear friend Rick. And now I can do this YouTube again for you, for me. And physically, you know, because it's the most density, that change comes the most slowly. So while I have it spiritually, I have it intellectually, I have it emotionally, that I don't need to be sick anymore. I'm just gradually getting better. I'm still extremely weak. I'm just learning to walk without falling over or walking into walls. I sit up for a few minutes at a time before I'm too exhausted to think. But oh my God, there's so much more of me. I'm addressing those limitations, and instead of being mad at myself, because I don't think it was a mistake that I was born ill. I don't think sickness is ever a mistake. It's a way of our spirit talking to us. And so I don't think that I just wasn't good enough to be well. I just think that I've reached a level where I can handle being this outrageous, this amazing. And so what I'm seeing, even before I get totally strong, is that one miracle after another is happening. People call me up and they ask me to pray for something, and then it happens. And it happens immediately. And people ask for my prayers for them. And there's nothing I have to do or change. All I have to do is let myself know that love wants to give its gifts. And so here I am, sitting before you, able to become more and more of myself. And I am so grateful that you're still here. Thank you so much. We're going to have so much fun together. Aloha, sweetheart.